So just like that, it's over, you know? Like, I was really curious, like, what The Last of Us HBO series would result in. Because, like, there was a very real possibility this would extend The Last of Us's relevancy for, like, another 5 years. You know, this has been a dying IP for a long time, I think. But there was this really embarrassing push, you know, when season one dropped to like present this as like the greatest video game adaptation ever. You know, even though it came out the same year as the far superior Super Mario Bros. Movie, which was far more successful and popular. So obviously, The Last of Us was never going to like stick around all that long, but it definitely had this weird like normie momentum behind it. I suppose it's no different than what happened when the game first dropped in 2013, where you just have like people ranting and raving about how it's the greatest story in video games ever, and like people who don't play a lot of games like believe it, like just by association, right? Like it was very similar to that, right? Like people adamantly push for the idea that The Last of Us HBO was a good series. Now, I didn't watch it because I'm not a homosexual, but like, you know, it was kind of cringy and embarrassing seeing people like who had not played the game like try and advocate for this like being some like really good adaptation. You know, it was just pants on head retarded. You know, you're not even a fan of the source material, and yet like you're hyping this up as a good adaptation. You know, and what was more like, you know, these people weren't even interested in trying out the video game, which I think really goes to show you just how little like these people were actually invested in the setting and the world, and how little an impact it actually had. You know, like The Last of Us is really interesting because I think it demonstrates like how easily manipulated like the masses can be with like this kind of mob kind of just like, oh, it's good because I said it good. Like The Last of Us was never good. It was absolutely one of the worst things to happen to gaming in the new tens. Right, it was an embarrassment, and it really needs to be called out for what it is. Right, I've been saying this like since the game came out, actually, and everything that's happened since then has only vindicated me. You know, like Uncharted 4, like the DLC, like the sequel, and the first season of the HBO show. You know, like everything that's happened has kind of vindicated good old Harmon Smith and proven that just Naughty Dog and by extension their parent company Sony are just a dying brand that will not survive the next 10 years. And we're in this really weird phase now where, like, after the disaster of The Last of Us Part 2, like, Sony has tried to, like, inject some life into the IP by releasing this HBO series, right? They put out the adaptation of the first game, which people pretended was good, and now they're on to the second. And just like the video game, the second seems intent on antagonizing as many people as possible. I've heard it's actually worse in the game in a lot of ways. But like considering like looking at the ratings and looking at like how like just how much they dropped immediately after Joel died, like it really goes to show you just like how normies reacted to like the same plot points that fans did back when the game came out like 5 years ago. You know, like it's the same exact kind of behavior. You know, people did not like how it was handled. People did not like the story. People don't like the hackneyed plot and the themes and the characters. Like it just fundamentally at its core does not work, and people are rejecting it. And there will be no salvaging it. I think uh, critics are doing their thing. You know, they're running damage control. They're seething. They're coping. But like this is it. I think we're past the point where like you know people understand what makes The Last of Us such a hated IP, and there just isn't going to be a return to form, right? There's not going to be like some glorious like comeback from this, you know. Like Druckmann just made his bed and just shit all over it, you know. Like he can't do a sequel, he can't do anything in the same setting. Uh, like The Last of Us was an absolute train wreck, and more people are finding out why, and we are starting to see the very real backlash to it. And this is a huge, huge deal because like The Last of Us was the Sony IP, you know, of the past 10 years. You know, like this was propped up as their game. You know, like this was supposed to be like the defining example of like everything PlayStation wanted to do with like serious cinematic storytelling, and it just became a joke. You know, the entire genre became a parody of itself. Even before The Last of Us Part Two came out, people were like talking about how tired they were of the movie games and just like how they like people wanted something a little bit different, and Sony just wasn't able to deliver on that, you know, like, and it's just resulted in like them strangling their golden goose, you know, like Druckmann's inability to produce a successful follow up to the original Last of Us is going to haunt his career forever. You know, like, and this show was supposed to be like his gateway into being accepted by Hollywood. You know, that's always been his goal. Like, he wanted to like walk the golden carpet and like actually have someone take his photograph this time. You know, like he was supposed to be a huge star. You know, he was supposed to be the man, and it's really interesting how in the gaming world he is treated like that, but in the world of Hollywood, he's not. You know, like Kojima has more credibility than he does. Probably because like people in Hollywood actually like his games. You know, it's embarrassing, you know, to see what's happened with this show and with the with the past like decade or more of this IP, and it's going to keep tumbling downward. If season three gets produced, which I think is going to be like you know more of The Last of Us Part Two, like it's you're going to keep seeing diminishing returns. You know, this is going to have like the stereotypical problem that a lot of shows have, where like you know they keep getting new seasons and less people keep tuning in. You know, like I think the Joel thing is a major tipping point for the majority of the audience. You know, people can't be invested in a generic sci-fi scenario. Well, this generic zombie apocalypse scenario without like a relatable main character. You know, that's the thing about this. You know, like this is why it doesn't work. You know, women don't like Ellie, and men, yeah, audiences don't uh, Ellie cannot carry a show on her own. You know, that's just the reality of it. She's not a great character. She's not endearing. She's not interesting. You know, like The Last of Us has failed